Frank, what's the weirdest thing you've ever saw in here?
Let me ask you a question, kid. Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
Hey, we gonna party tonight or what?
Yeah, we are gonna party.
Well, where are we gonna party?
I don't know, somewhere.
Hey, we could go to the park.
Oh, no, we can't. The cops said they'd shoot us if we go back to the park.
Yeah, and I ain't in no mood to go tonight.
I like death.
Girls, and welcome to minute 37 of Do You Want to Party, the Movies by Minute podcast for the 1985 groundbreaking horror classic, The Return of the Living Dead. I'm your host, Troy, and for this episode, I'm being joined by the Craven the Hunter to my Hobgoblin,
Mitchell Tully.
Yes,
thank you for having me.
Yes,
sorry, it took me a second because I'm like, oh yeah, I've not done that cosplay in a while.
No, I was going through some stuff and all like that. That was a big group cosplay of like 8 of us, all doing Spider-Man bad guys.
Yeah, and the photographer, when we went to go with the photo of Stan Lee, being upset that we had so many people in the photos, even though the website said if you bought 2 photo tickets, you're allowed to have more than 4 people.
And yep, I made sure I actually talked to someone about it, and that's what happened there. Yes,
but I guess seeing 8 supervillains like Doc Ock and stuff was a bit much. So.
Yeah, especially when we all have to crowd around poor Stan Lee, which was fun. I'm sure he didn't even faze him.
No, he's seen it all. He had seen it all before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so this minute starts with Bert asking about confirmation and ends with Bert still asking about confirmation. So as we start mid-scene from the last minute, the camera is still tucked away behind the piping and the dials and gauges. Ernie is still adjusting the controls that are to the right of the crematorium door. In the middle, as mostly circular room, stands Bert watching Ernie working, while further back against the wall of the room, sitting on the bench, are Frank and Freddy. Oddly enough, in their out of focus distance, they're looking quite pinkish.
You see the amount of sweat on him as well.
Yeah, you can definitely make out the amount of sweat on Frank. Yeah. That is for sure. Yes.
I just love this angle because it feels like we're in the walls peeking on them, and we're just about getting ready to jump out and terrorize them. Mm-hmm. And it's an amazing angle for it.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, while they do look a bit pinkish, yet their mutual posture tells a different story. Bert asks Ernie about the removal of their problem.
And buddy boy, you go get rid of everything for me. Nothing left. Is that right?
As we now look into the open oven of the gas supplied fire ignites on the left side, spurting up from the piping along the floor on the chamber. The flames dancing up through the rack just slightly above it. Ernie tells Bert about the completion of the job.
Everything will go.
And the sound of an adjusting dial can be heard as the flames jump from the other side, also igniting, filling the oven with bright orange flames. Cutting back to the previous shot, Bert is bent over slightly as he's looking into the fire. As the camera begins to pan from behind the adjustment equipment, Bert inquires about the skeletal remains.
What about the bones?
Ernie quickly informs him that they're the easy portion at this point.
Bones are no problem.
And then points out the difficulty of the destruction of the main cardiac muscle.
Hardest thing to burn is the heart.
Once the shot settles into view of the opening of the oven, Bert questions the reason for Ernie's remark.
Heart? Why?
While adjusting the dials, Ernie explains that he'll makeup of the it's the makeup of the organ.
Or is it just one big tough muscle?
Bert goes into a little bit of a panic mode as he starts pacing the length of the room.
Yeah, but Ernie, I mean, come on, we don't want the heart sticking around.
It should be noted that Frank and Freddy have repositioned their posture. Frank leaning onto his right side hand with his hands held between his knees. Freddy takes an almost nonchalant pose as he rests his chin on his right hand, that his arm is supported on his knee.
I was gonna say, I always interpret this as their bodies are giving out, so they need support to stay standing up. That's why they're leaning. That's why they're propping themselves up. It like if a breeze just came, they're falling over on their sides onto the floor. They are in a weak state.
Well, I also think it's because of the fact that to begin with, we've gone through dress rehearsal of this sequence a couple of times with three of these four actors and all that. Like I said, the 2 weeks of acting and all that. But I think what it is that Tom Matthews and James Caron are repositioning themselves so that they're in a different angle of the shot, so that they're not behind Don Calfa as he's moving around, and they're not interfering with Clu Gallagher as he's moving around too. So they're still now central in the shot, because if you see, they lean into more of the center of the shot at this particular point. And I think they just choose a different posture for just this little sequence, because as I read on in a little bit, you'll see that they reset themselves to more of the slumped back that they were just prior to the camera moving and all that. So I think they just decided to change their position just because of the camera move, so that they're still focused central on the shot while the other two actors are working around them. So, and it just happens, Tom Matthews happens to have this like hand on his chin sort of look, and like he's also like doing like a man's spreading sort of thing as well. And like if you look at his one, he's actually got the one foot that has the handkerchief tied around it. It's like his foot is sort of crooked to the side. It's a skew to the side and all that. So I think it's just
on the outer edge of the foot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Both gentlemen, that's Frank and Freddy, are now looking into the fire, and at the bottom of the frame we can see the pile of wriggling bags on the stretcher. The ferrets. As he paces towards the opposite side of the room, Bert voices his concern for the heart remaining behind. To leave his inquiry, Ernie responds by informing him, while accenting his point by gesturing with his whole arm, that he'll increase the fire.
And I'll turn up hotter for the heart.
Also turning the dial. A shot of the oven again, showing the fire inside is increasing. An off-camera mention from Frank about the dogs is heard, and Ernie mentions they'll be dealt with as well.
What about the split dogs? They gotta go.
The split dogs will go too.
Cutting back to the full room shot, Ernie, standing at the very opening of the oven, reaches in and holds onto the rack with his safety gloves that he's been wearing all the time. And steps back, pulling the metal surface with him for quite a few steps. Once the rack is fully out, he looks to Bert and demands his assistance.
Fine, just give me a hand. It's your mess.
He picks up a single moving bag, and drops it onto the rack. Frank and Freddy, still seated, readjust themselves, Freddy pushing himself from his hunched over onto his knees to leaning against the wall again. Frank slightly turns his body towards Fred as he is now supporting himself on his left arm. Reluctantly, but concluding that Ernie is right, Bert steps towards the pile of bags and picks one up. He makes a sound of protest, protesting the situation, placing it on the rack. Ernie reaches back for another. A two-shot of Frank and Freddy, observing the others working, has Frank mention his opinion of Ernie's assistance with their situation and how he himself could have done that.
Some big favor. I can operate that goddamn thing.
I always love those kind of statements. It's like so dismissive and blasé, not just in like this one particular scene, but often used for, oh, I could paint that. Oh, I could have made that. I'm just like, motherfucker, this guy's helping you and you're being such a dick about it.
Well, to prove a point, it's another one of Chekhov's sort of situations. It's Chekhov's statement, as we remember later on in the movie.
Yeah.
Do you know the reason? Do you know the reason for this particular statement?
What do you mean?
Okay, so the story the way you know how the story runs out with
Yeah,
Frank's character, right?
Yeah.
So as it turns out, in the early stages of staging it and all that, there was going to be a sequence where Frank was going to go outside into the rain and all that sort of thing. And James Cameron came to the conclusion that he didn't want to work in the wetness. So he brought the idea of him doing what he does later on in the movie to alleviate the fact that he didn't have to go out into the rainy nighttime shoots. And when Dan O'Bannon said, "Oh, that sounds like a great idea. We could totally do that." So that's what this in-church shot is, to set up that later sequence, because he didn't want to work outside in the cold rain.
So this is his Raiders of the Lost Ark moment where he didn't want to have a big duel with the guy with the swords and just
exactly.
shoots him.
He shoots him with his gun. Yes,
I'm too tired to go in the rain
because he had dysentery, so he just shot the guy. Right, exactly. It's
okay,
his
right.
It's his Indiana Jones moment. That's right. That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. Okay. The practical leading into it. I get it.
Exactly. So we then cut to an upward shot of the oven as Bert picks up and places the last of the moving trash bags onto the rack of the oven. Bert asks for yet another guarantee of removing all the evidence.
Are you absolutely certain that this will get rid of everything and do the trick? I mean, nothing left.
Completely sure of the ability to do so, he confronts Bert concerning by telling him that the only thing that will be left behind is ashes.
Nothing but a little bitty pile of ashes.
Bert quickly protests when those sticking around.
Well, we don't really want the ashes, eh?
Ernie leans in forward and telling him his solution to that.
Then I'll turn it up high.
As we end this minute. All right, so over on the commentary track with director-writer Dan O'Bannon and production designer William Stout, continuing on the conversation from of the oven, Dan O'Bannon praises William Stout's design and construction of the door on the oven, all being fabricated and partly based on a real crematorium, but very closely upon the oven doors at Auschwitz, which is the effect Dan O'Bannon wanted. He mentions remembering that the doors were constructed out of fiberglass and how the day they put the real fire in it, that everyone was freaking out, and how they had the Burbank Fire Department there. William Stout cuts in to point out the striping that suggests bars, and he mentions it from a cage lamp that was found by Robert Holland, and how it made great shadows. As Don Calfa pulls out the rack, Dan O'Bannon then again mentions the small budget that they had. The metal rack was actually metal, but not made to withstand heat. William Stout chuckling at that. Dan O'Bannon points out that it started to sag and begin drooping. When it cuts to the ground up angle, Dan O'Bannon does a little praise of the shot by twice calling it a nice shot. He then finishes it off by mentioning the closeness of the closing of the Auschwitz door with a big metal clang. And that's where we come up. That's where we end up the minute. So that's where the commentary actually stops as well.
You always need a big metal clang, like even for the symbolism of it, but in general, having that thud, that finale kind of period to the scene, it always carries such great weight to it.
Especially for a door made out of fiberglass.
Yeah.
It goes to show how your Foley works really well for situations.
Foley artists are amazing because they're always the ones that you don't notice anything with it. It just feels right. But as soon as something's like slightly odd, everyone will notice. It's like such an unsung art form of it.
Oh, for sure. No, it is. Yeah. And a lot of scenes, especially a movie that is in the horror genre, where it's the environment that fills in the gaps. It fills in so much more than. Also, you can say the score also helps as well to work on mood, but for actual physical representation, having something on screen have a resounding sound is definitely a key thing. Yes.
like the world isn't a quiet place. So having a
No.
perfect sound stage with no noise going on feels weird. It feels unnatural. It's
Hmm.
the uncanny valley aspect of audio. It
Exactly.
just
Yeah.
it's too perfect. So
Hmm.
having all these little noises and things just makes it feel more alive and
Yeah,
real.
that is another cool thing about, like I said, the upcoming work print that I do the comparison of. There, it is basically just sound from the day of. So you just hear like audio and whatever insequential background noise. Like you don't hear like crickets in the cemetery and all that sort of thing. And you don't hear, yeah, you don't hear the steps creaking as people are going up and down into the basement of the
Yeah.
Unita warehouse and all that. So yeah. All right. So according to the script, and again, this is a story and screenplay by Dan O'Bannon, and this is the revision from October 1983, which is based on the story and screenplay by John Russo, Rudy Rickey, and Russell Steiner. So seeing this particular minute starts just a couple of seconds at the tail end of the previous minute. We'll just start from that point there. So it begins with the description of the sequence, which is interior, crematorium, night. Close, oven. Ernie hand turns the knobs and ignites the gas jets with a loud thump. Widen the angle to reveal Ernie, Bert, Frank, and Freddie all standing around the stretcher with the wriggling plastic bags on the floor. Ernie is lighting the oven. Ernie, yes, sir. I reckon you're gonna owe me a big one. Bert, this will destroy everything, right? With nothing left over? Ernie, oh, everything will go. Bert, including the bones? Ernie, oh, the bones are no problem. The hardest thing to burn is the heart. Bert, the heart? Why? Ernie, it's just a big, tough muscle. Bert, we don't want the heart sticking around, Ernie. Ernie, don't worry. I'll turn it up hotter for the heart. Frank, and the split dogs. That has to go too. Ernie, the split dog will go. Ernie opens up the door of the oven and pulls out the long, sliding stainless steel rack that bodies are burned on. Ernie continuing, give me a hand here. They start transferring the squirming bags from the stretcher to the steel rack. Bert, so there won't be nothing left then. Ernie, nothing but a little pile of ashes. Bert, but we don't even want the ashes, Ernie. Ernie, well, then I'll just turn it up higher. And that's where we end our particular minute for this particular part of the script. So, as you can see, the like I said, the earlier mentioned the Frank pointed out that he could do the exact sort of thing and all that isn't in this version of the script. Again, this is October 83. They didn't start filming until like around that time and all that sort of thing to get the film done in time. But yeah, so it's interesting at either if it was added at some point or if it, I don't know, was just something they decided when they started shooting, like, hey, let's add this extra scene and all that. But yeah, so according to the script, it's not quite there. Plus, according to the script, there's only one dog because it's only a singular. They mentioned singular, while there is in the movie he definitely says dogs plural. So
It could be for the dogs one, it could just be happened that they had a couple dogs on set to see which one they like to bark better, and they're like, hey, let's just have them both. But for the adding of the lines, it's curious to see what the order of filming was. And same with the practice and the rehearsals, because if they filmed the scene where they originally wrote of him going out into the rain, and then they realize it's not good and they're prepping it, and then that's what spurred him to rewrite it later on when they refilm this, or of course going back for rewrites or
right.
reshoots.
Yeah.
It could just be a happenstance of, yeah, we're gonna do some rain once. Oh, I don't want to go out doing that.
Yeah. Well, because I think at one point, Frank's zombie character was going to join the horde along with Trash's zombie character, so that's where that was going to happen. So he'd be running around eating people and all that sort of thing and whatnot. That's what he wanted to avoid, and because the movie is generally pretty much, except for the Colonel's sequence inside the house, because I believe, if I remember correctly, that was the first thing that they shot was all the Colonel's house, where he sets himself up and all that. We meet his wife and whatnot, but everything from that point on is all shot practically chronologically in order,
Okay.
just so that you don't have to deal with like when you're dealing with characters like Frank and Freddy, you can progress with their makeup from day to
Yeah.
day to make them look sicker and sicker, and you don't have to worry about trying to match, oh, we've gone back
True.
a couple of hours to shoot, because again, this takes place in the span
of a day.
A night.
Right?
Yeah, practically. Well, technically, yeah, it starts around 5 and ends around 5 in the morning, so about 12 hours.
Yeah.
So that's the main reason why they shoot chronological, at least for the most part. But again, they would have done
rehearsals and script reads, and during that process, they were able
probably
to
where,
build together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. So speaking of work print comparison, this is again when you film a movie, you bring all the original edit together, and it's usually a long compiled sequence of everything that you shot that you want to keep and all that, and then you eventually dwindle it down to your edited final version of what you present to the public. Now, this particular movie, I'm watching minute by minute comparison. So whereas in the final film, we are at minute 36 to 37. The work print has gotten up to this sequence as being a 4150 to 4259. So we actually have, again, another increase in the sequence. While this moment plays out the same as in the final film, there are a few slight differences. When in the final version, we watch the inside of the oven where the fire increases, as Frank mentions, the split dogs, the work print doesn't cut to the oven and stays on the continuous shot of the group. Also in the final version, as Ernie is about to reach for his second bag to put on the rack before cutting to the close-up of Frank and Freddy, the work print has Ernie and Bert each grabbing another bag and putting them onto the rack. And speaking of the Frank and Freddy close-up, after Frank mentions that he could operate that thing, Freddy adds, "Who would want to?" And then the rest of the sequence runs out as the final version. So it's kind of neat to see that we actually have an extra line from Tom Matthews that progresses as like, yeah, but who would want to do that sort of thing? Like, who would want to do that for, I don't know if he means if he wanted to like work a crematorium for a living, or who would want to, anyways, sort of thing. But it
does seem like an original version of the "I could do that," where it's still a not degrading, I guess, kind of degrading, looking down upon it, the profession of it,
right,
and switching it up to the "I can do that" feels a little more natural, I guess, for the character, especially in that moment. Yeah, it seems like that's probably the route they went from it then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so that's gonna wrap everything up for this particular minute. Do you have anything else you want to point out about this particular minute, Mr. Mitch? Because again, we're at that point. We're about to, because in the previous minute we've already set in motion what's going to happen for the rest of the movie. Like the last minute was the linchpin for, is this movie going to turn out the way it is, or is it not going to, like, it's that like one of two roads. And obviously we're following from Ernie's decision to help out Bert that we're on this path, and
we're now leading into the catalyst of the chemical spreading and the path, the point of no return.
Exactly.
As soon as they act upon this, they're all doomed.
Yeah, you're like basically the middle minute of it. The previous minute, the decision was made. The next minute, as soon as that actual door comes down, that's it.
I am just at the part of the roller coaster where I'm starting to tip over. I'm not quite at the top, but I'm just about to look down on it.
What it is you're on one of those ones that have a high incline, but it's got that upper plateau that curves around, waiting for the back track, but it's waiting for the back of the carts to get up to that same level as well, and then yours is about to go over the edge, sort of thing.
You just feel that pause and that moment of dread.
Exactly.
So excellent.
It is. It is. All right. So I want to thank you, Mitch, for joining me here for this particular minute. I want to thank the audience for hopping along this particular roller coaster ride as we're about to hit this downhill portion of the movie. We are. I'm thrilled that the numbers keep slowly but surely increasing. It's cool to see that YouTube is taken off and all that sort of thing. So I guess that's a fantastic place where people just turn on whatever podcasts and have it play in the background sort of thing. So I'm always welcome to that. If you guys out there have anything to say about previous minutes, this particular minute, or any future minutes, drop a comment at whatever point that you're listening to, however you're listening to or watching this. And who knows, you can even send us an email at our email, which is planetgeekpod@gmail.com. We can carry on the conversation there, or eventually roll it into a future episode. Like we've had a couple of people from a couple of our social medias actually join us on one or two of our episodes and all that sort of thing. So to wrap things up, I want to thank you once again, Mr. Mitch. I want to thank
my pleasure. Always great to be on. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks once again, audience. And I have nothing else to say, but see you next Wednesday. You've just been listening to a Planet Geek production of Do You Want to Party? A Movies by Minute podcast of the 1985 The Return of the Living Dead. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, or Letterboxd. Search for Planet Geek Productions. X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. Or send us an email to planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Our closing music is provided by Night Chill. See the show notes for more details. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and farewell, fiends. I know. What are the chances? Actual footage. Greetings, ghouls and fiends. Allow me to step right in here. This is Troy, the host of Do You Want to Party, coming at you with a little bit of information. In February of this year, of 2025, and that's for the history books, I had mentioned that I was looking to rent a space to be able to not only show an actual 40th anniversary showing on August 16th of 2025, again for the history books, of The Return of the Living Dead, but that I was also going to put together an actual in-person recording of a particular episode that lines up with that particular day. The update is that a few of the locations that I have actually spoken to not only say that the date is actually available, but that they are very interested in putting on this event. So, step one complete. However, going into this endeavor, I knew that I would have some sort of financial backing needed to be able to pull this off. The good thing is, it's not a huge amount that is needed. It's just slightly outside of my reach. And that brings me to the reason for this particular message. I'm here to ask you, my fantastic and loyal audience, if you go to ko-fi.com/planetgeekpod, you will find the donation page for Planet Geek Productions. Any and all donations made between this date and mid-July will go directly into the funds to pay for the event in August. As an extra incentive, I will be offering giveaways as a special thank you for your financial support. Currently, I'm working on figuring out what those actually are, but at the very, very least, all donations will receive a personal thank you from myself. Also, any donation over the $5 mark will have two things available to them. If you are local and are able to attend in person the event, you will be guaranteed a ticket. However, if you cannot be there, you will be given access to the live stream of the recording of the episode prior to the showing of the movie. And the bigger the donation, the bigger the items that I'm going to be giving to you. Again, Not 100% sure as of this date what they actually are, but they will be something like stickers, bookmarks, art prints, and maybe even some movie cards. And that's just for starters. I will also be offering shout out and future co-host tiers. In conclusion, I want to thank you once again, simply just for listening to the podcast. It really does mean a lot to me. And I hope that I will have the opportunity to entertain you in all future Planet Geek productions. And now for this episode's outtakes. Now, I lost my place because someone decided to interrupt me. But
Hey,
that is exactly what you are for.
conversation.
No, that is exactly what you are here for. Yes.
I thought that. I'm sorry. I will put myself on mute. Click.
No, you please do not. Please do not.
We were at the part where they're walking back and forth and describing the cartilage of the heart being so dense and hard to burn. And, you know, it's always a great sign when you're doing a buddy a favor and they don't want any evidence or remains. It's a very normal thing for your friend to ask.
Yeah.
Especially in these times.
William Stout cuts in to point out the striping that suggests the bars he mentions. Nope, that's not how that says. Let me look at that again. William Stout coats in, huh? All right, let's try it again. It's a good thing I know how to edit. All right, let's try that one more time. I was listening to a podcast today, Random Horror Podcast number 9, and they were talking about American Werewolf in London, which is kind of cool. But for the past couple of weeks, this movie, The Return of the Living Dead, has been on their list of maybe they'll do this for like the past. And one of the hosts is all like, I haven't seen the movie yet, so I'm saving it for this podcast. So when it naturally comes up, it'll be my first time watching. I'm like, no, to like over like the past 4 weeks, it's come up twice, and it's kind of funny that when leading into American Werewolf in London, Return of the Living Dead was also another choice that they could have gone with, but they went with American Werewolf in London. So I'm listening to them talk about my other podcast that I've already did, and I'm waiting for them to talk about this podcast sort of thing. So I'm like, oh, come on. So I'm going to start going on to their social medias and like spamming, do whatever it is, just do the Return of the Living Dead.